All right. Looks like we're going to go ahead and get started. For those of you who are joining, as we said, this will be available after the presentation. We will have this made available to everybody. But I'd like to go ahead and get started. So good morning officially. Good afternoon to those of you in England. We have several folks coming from overseas. So uh, like to welcome you as well and everybody else that's on the webcast. We're pleased to have you join us this morning and afternoon for the webcast. My name is Dr. Shayne Horan. I'm the VP of Schools at the Help Group, and I'll be moderating today's webcast, Understanding Pathological Demand Avoidance in Autistic Youth and Young Adults. For those of you joining us for the first time, I would just like to tell you a little bit about us. At the Help Group, we believe that every person deserves a great future, a future where the world finds strengths and differences, believing that dignity, hope, opportunity, and love are the birthrights of all. The Help Group strives to transform lives by recognizing, cultivating, and celebrating the individual gifts of those with special needs related to autism, learning differences, ADHD, developmental delays, and emotional challenges through its family of innovative educational, therapeutic, residential, and vocational programs, and its advancement of cutting-edge research, professional training, outreach, and public policy advocacy. So just a little housekeeping before we start. During the presentation, you may use the chat function to ask questions. We will do our absolute best to reserve time at the end of this webcast to hold a Q&A, and we will attempt to answer as many of the questions as time allows. As you know, our webcast topic is Understanding Pathological Demand Avoidance in Autistic Youth and Young Adults. And I'm pleased to introduce our amazing speaker today, Dr. Laurie Stevens. Dr. Stevens is a developmental clinical psychologist who's been working therapeutically with autistic individuals for over 30 years. She currently serves as the Help Group's Senior Director of Autism and Clinical Services. Dr. Stevens utilizes a strengths-based affirming model in all her work with clients and in supporting the Help Group staff who work with students, clients, and families. With that being said, let's get started. Thank you, Dr. Stevens, and you may begin.
Great. Thank you for that introduction, Shayne, and welcome to everybody. I know we have an international audience today, so I appreciate everybody taking the time and being interested in learning more about pathological demand avoidance. Before I get into my slides, I want everybody to take a moment to think about something that you actually really enjoy thinking about or talking about with your friends. So something like you might really enjoy, let's say, talking about climate change with your friends, and you feel like you know a lot about climate change, and you like to read about it, and it's very important to you. And this is something that, at a dinner party or whatever, you're going to have a nice conversation about it. And then one day, one of your friends says, "Hey, guess what? I just booked you on a talk show to talk about climate change to 300 people. It's going to be filmed and it's going to be shown internationally." And think about what your reaction to that is going to be, right? Most people will go, and we might say, no, 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 can't do that. Even though you talk about it all the time, even though you love the topic, there's a feeling that you get inside of yourself that instantly says, I can't do this. This is too much. I'm overwhelmed. I can't, or you just freeze. It's like, can't do that, right? So keep that feeling in mind. Remember how that feels, because it's going to come up time and time again to help you kind of empathize and understand what people with pathological demand avoidance might be experiencing at all times. So Aldo, if I could have my first slide, please. Thank you. So what is pathological demand avoidance? Because I know many of you know this is not a diagnosis. It's not something that you can go to a doctor and they can ask you a couple of questions and then give you an official diagnosis of pathological demand avoidance. It's really right now more of a constellation of traits and behaviors that we use to define pathological demand avoidance. And basically, it is extreme avoidance of everyday demands That's also coupled with this really strong need for autonomy, right? Like I want to be in control and I need to be in control. And anytime that I feel that I'm not, it produces an extreme reaction in myself. So we are not talking about your teenager who, when you say, hey, I need you to feed the dog, is kind of like just ignores you and plays on their, continues to play on their Switch or whatever. We're really talking about an extreme reaction to any level of a perceived demand where it's called pathological, even though we don't like that word pathological. And so sometimes people will say it's extreme demand avoidance, but it's called pathological because it is not at all in line with what we would assume most people can handle when we say, hey, can you feed the dog? And even though, again, we might be saying that to somebody who absolutely loves the dog and cares deeply about the dog and will feed the dog on their own. But the minute you say to them, you need to feed the dog, that's when you get this reaction. So PDA is really also an anxiety disorder. And I think this is something that a lot of people don't keep in the back of their mind. Sometimes people think it's manipulation, it's avoidance, but it's really an anxiety response to these perceived demands. I don't know how to react. I am completely petrified, if you will, of having to get up and do what you've asked me to do. Again, doesn't matter whether you're capable of doing it. Those of you who talk and study climate change could probably easily give a talk on climate change, but it doesn't mean that you're comfortable and it doesn't mean that you're going to agree to do it. You have anxiety when you're asked to do something, especially if it kind of was unplanned or unpredictable. So pathological demand avoidance was kind of first written about in the 70s by Elizabeth Newsom. And one of her quotes that I have here is that she defined pathological demand avoidance as a need to avoid everyday demands to reduce anxiety by using social manipulation as a key strategy. And we're going to talk about what that means further in a minute. But again, the key there is a need to avoid. It's not a want to avoid. It's I have to avoid these demands in order to keep myself regulated, in order to stay calm. And what we see in pathological demand avoidance is that there's very rapid mood swings, again, that are all kind of driven by this desire for control, and that we see a lot of obsessive behaviors. And these oftentimes are focused on interactions or focused on other people. So there's a lot of discussion, with my adult clients who have PDA, there's a lot of discussion of the man, and, the people keeping them down and trying to control them and everything. So there's just this complete focus on kind of other people or society as being the other person. Next slide, please. Another thing that we see with people who experience pathological demand avoidance is this extreme difficulty with understanding what they view as an arbitrary hierarchy, right? Like, why is it that my teacher gets to tell me what to do? My teacher doesn't know what I like to do. My teacher doesn't know what I want to know. Why can my boss tell me when I should have a report done? I'll get it done when I get it done. And they don't understand whoever came up with the structure and why does it exist? Because there's a lot of comments of because it's not fair. And I'm going to give you some examples of this in a minute. But I think also, especially when you're dealing with, let's say, somebody's having difficulty at work and students who are having difficulty at school, if you keep that in mind, that PDA people oftentimes do not understand why is the teacher getting to make all of the decisions? Why do my parents get to make all the decisions? Why does my boss get to control me? I'm a human being and I don't want to be controlled like that. And so that's where a lot of this sort of view of persistent or pathological reactions to demands come about from. People with PDA have a very strong sense of ethics And there's often a desire to like create new systems, to redesign society. Many of my clients over the years have talked about their ideal society, and if only they ruled the world, how everything would be. And it's very interesting and very telling, because when they do come up with this idea that everybody has an equal voice, and we talk about what that would look like, sometimes they realize that that might not work. But there's often a real focus again on fairness and what they perceive as fairness. And I think that especially as a therapist, as a teacher, being able to explain that definition of fairness, that fairness is that everybody gets what they need, not that everybody gets the same thing. And I think a lot of people with PDA understand this a little bit more than other people do who use the word fair. So, for instance, a sibling might say, it's not fair that he doesn't have to put on his shoes. But the fact is that if that child, especially if it's a child with autism and PDA, really cannot handle putting on their shoes prior to getting into the car, it's fair that they don't have to do that until you get to your destination or something like that. For a child for whom it doesn't matter and doesn't bother them, it's fair that they put them on before they leave the house. It's that everybody gets what they need. When you experience PDA, what you're feeling inside is this constant state of internal discomfort. So you can kind of think of this as PDA being an involuntary response to any threat to your autonomy, right? I am not in control. I am not making the decisions right now. And you're going to have a visceral, a physical reaction to that. It's not just like a mental, oh, I don't want to be controlled. Your body, and we're going to talk about this again in a minute, your body is having a real reaction. And again, PDA is not a diagnosis, so it's not recognized in the ICD for those of you in the UK and Europe, and it's not recognized in the DSM. So these are our classification manuals to determine what diagnoses people have. You can't bill insurance under a PDA, even though that might be a reason why you might be treating a particular client. They're not. It really is more like a constellation of traits and symptoms. There is discussion about, is there a way to actually quantify and measure pathological demand avoidance so that it could be added into classification systems? But at the moment, it is not an official diagnosis. Next slide, please. So what are a couple of the symptoms that we see in pathological demand avoidance? And I'm going to start with the bright yellow circle if you want to follow along. So oftentimes, people who experience pathological demand avoidance, especially children, really get very involved in pretend play and role play. So they really enjoy becoming other people. And a lot of times that might also be becoming the leader. So if they're playing house, it might be becoming the mom or the father. If they're playing school, it's always wanting to be the teacher. If they're doing something else, I used to refer to this oftentimes with my young clients as being the director. They were the ones who were calling all the shots, setting up all the scenes, in play. And what we see also with this is when we encounter these children who oftentimes want to take on a different identity. So I had a client for a while when he was about 10 who decided that he was Gumby. And it wasn't a psychotic kind of thing. He knew he wasn't literally Gumby, but he wanted to be called Gumby. He wrote Gumby on all of his papers. He insisted that everybody called him Gumby and wanted to only talk about Pokey and everybody else involved in that show as if he really were that character. And again, if you asked him and said, "Are you really Gumby?" he would say, "No, but I want to be called Gumby." So this was like taking kind of pretend play and having it move into the entirety of his life. I've already talked about the pathological demand avoidance is really this need for autonomy and control. We oftentimes see very significant either meltdowns, so meltdowns being yelling, screaming, throwing, hitting, biting, just a lack of kind of control. But we also see shutdowns. where the person will just freeze. They will be unable to move forward. They will be unable to do anything really. So you get meltdowns and shutdowns. And again, this is one of the ways that we can differentiate pathological demand avoidance from people who just don't want to do something that you're asking them to do. Usually when you nag, it leads to the person, oh, fine, I'll do it. That doesn't happen in pathological demand avoidance. Any nagging is going to lead to either this increase in response or shutting down, but it's rarely would nagging work. Again, there's this misunderstanding of social hierarchies. Oftentimes people with PDA are either over sensory seekers, so they really like loud music, flashing lights, a lot of heavy weight on top of them. They're really seeking out sensory input, or they really cannot handle sensory input. So they can't be in a classroom with very many other kids. They can't be in a movie theater where people are sitting close by. They don't like crowds. So it can go either way. Special interests tend to oftentimes be very person focused, people focused. So again, many of my PDA clients will kind of obsess about a particular person in their class. And it's just kind of nonstop, well, she said this and she did that. And I didn't like when this happened. And it's this over focus on just this one particular person, and oftentimes not aware of their role in that social interaction or why some of those things might be happening. And then finally, it's really defined by people who really resist the demands of everyday life. And again, this is even if they like doing a task, it's something that they're just not capable of doing in the moment. Next slide. So what are some of the things that you might see from people with pathological demand avoidance? When you go and you give a command, so you go in and you say, hey, you know what? It's time to start your homework. You're going to get a delay tactic. Oh, but I need to finish my game first. I'll do it later. And that's the very beginning of it, right? They might try to distract you. So you come in, hey, you need to get your homework started. And they're like, oh, look what the dog's doing. Oh, she's so cute. Oh, isn't she sweet? Trying to get you to move on to something else and forget about the fact that you came in to tell them to do their homework. They're going to try to negotiate with you. Oh, let me just finish my game and then I'll take out the trash. But through experience, you kind of know that it's not going to happen after they finish their game. They're going to either start a new game or they're going to move on to something else, or they're just going to go to sleep. And you'll come back in and say, hey, you said you were going to take out the trash. They can engage in a lot of make-believe, and this is something else that seems to be primarily seen in people with pathological demand avoidance, and that is, I need you to take out the trash. I can't. I twisted my ankle. And, it's like, oh, but you weren't limping, you were fine. No, I'm really in a lot of pain. I can't do it now. They might use humor. Again, it's kind of a distraction, but humor is a really common strategy that's used by people with PDA. So they might start to tell you a knock-knock joke and just kind of try to be like, oh, isn't everything funny and everything is fine and I'm calm and you're calm, but I'm not going to follow your command there. So these are some of the characteristics that you'll see when you continue to push that demand. That's when you're going to get the meltdown. That's when you're going to get the person overreacting, meltdown or shutdown, right? Or just unable to do anything. When you say, oh, you said you were going to take out the trash and you didn't. And then you might get somebody yelling and screaming, I will do it when I'm ready to do it. Stop telling me what to do. And you'll get this extreme reaction from them. Next slide, please. So the overlap between PDA and autism is really interesting. The problem with being able to really tell is, does everybody with autism have PDA? Are all PDA people also autistic? Is that we don't have a good way of measuring PDA right now. There are a few checklists that exist out there, but they don't really have clear empirical evidence because nobody has fully and clearly defined what PDA is. But I'm here to tell you that PDA and autism are not the same thing. So you can be autistic and not have PDA. You can also be PDA and not have autism. So, for instance, PDA is also found in a lot of ADHD children and adults, and you can have PDA without having any other necessary diagnosable condition, although you might meet the diagnostic criteria for anxiety, let's say. So they're not the same thing, and not all autistic people have PDA. It's a subset of the autistic population. And because it's not a diagnosis, the prevalence of PDA is difficult to establish. But what research has shown is that about 20% of autistic youth do show traits of PDA. This has only been done in children. It has not been studied in adults yet. And about 4% in a study that was done by Gilberg, but this was like back in 2015, I think, so it was quite a while ago. 4% of autistic youth met the full criteria for PDA, but it's unclear. That was just a random decision as to what made the full PDA. So basically, we can figure that about 1 in 5, right? Autistic people are going to have a PDA profile. And there's a little bit of a difference or a distinction in kind of autistic people without PDA and autistic people with PDA. So autistic people with PDA actually tend to be highly sociable. They are very interested in interaction and very interested in having friends. But again, they don't always understand that social hierarchy. They don't understand where they might fit in a cohort. They're the type of people that will chat with somebody online once and then say, that's my boyfriend, that's my girlfriend, we're best friends. So doesn't understand like the friendship pyramid and how friendship develops, but they're very motivated by interaction and socialization. They also tend to be very verbally competent. So people with PDA tend to have very good verbal skills. They just don't seem to maybe understand as much of the language as they use. So, some autistic people have that sort of like whole language, gestalt language processing, where language is a sentence. It's not necessarily made up of individual words that can then be manipulated. And so it's thought that people with PDA, despite having excellent vocabularies and everything, their comprehension of language and understanding, let's say, like the abstract use of language, some pragmatic language skills would be lower than their ability to be able to use vocabulary words. They're also often very skilled, as I said before, when it comes to pretend play. And that's not something that we always see as being common in the autistic population as a whole. In fact, it's something that's thought kind of as a definition of autism, right, is that they're not good at pretend play. And of course, we know that that's not true. There's a subset that are very good, and it seems to be aligning with those that also have the PDA profile. And both autistic traits and anxiety are kind of unique within that autism profile, and they seem to be equally important predictors. So we're looking for autistic traits, we're looking for anxiety traits, and those seem to then predict a PDA profile. Next slide, please. So I thought I would take a moment just to kind of share some quotes with you, because I think I can talk about PDA, but you never really understand anything till you hear it from lived experience. So these are various quotes from clients, a few I've gotten online, and some quotes from parents raising people with PDA. So the first one is, so many day-to-day things trigger my PDA. Gentle suggestions, advice, needing to get up and drink water, the demand of masking. So masking is an autistic quality where people attempt to act neurotypical and not let people see that they have autism. And it's a very intense and it's a very draining activity to engage in. But this is one of the things I find fascinating. A text message, wearing acceptable clothing, and even advertisements. I don't know why the spacing there is very weird, but that word is supposed to be advertisements. And I have discussed with my clients this idea of a text message setting off PDA. And what many of my clients have said, and if anybody here reads Reddit subforums on autism and everything, you see that there's this feeling that a text message is like, I expect you to respond right away, as opposed to an email or reaching out through social media like an Instagram or Facebook. That you texted me because I need to respond right away. And like my clients have talked about how they perseverate and perseverate and perseverate about, well, when do I respond? Well, I can't respond right now. And that person's going to hate me and that person's going to think that I ghosted them. And alternately, my clients also think that when they send a text message, if somebody does not respond right away, they hate me, they're ghosting me, they obviously don't care about me, when you have to kind of explain, well, a text message really isn't a demand to respond right away. So I find that fascinating that something like that can be setting off PDA. And think about all of these things and how much this person must be struggling internally all the time. I have to wear acceptable clothing. There's ads that are telling me that I have to use this laundry detergent, but what if I don't want to? And how do I know that it's truly better? And why are they telling me what to do all the time on all of these advertisements? So if something like that can set off PDA, I want you to be able to, again, just think about that feeling that you may have had when you have to go and do public speaking, and think about if you felt that way almost all the time because everything somehow was setting off your PDA. The second one, it's just how somebody asks him to do something. This is a mother. Because if he sees it as we need to go and do our reading now, he'll refuse to do it. But if it's our discovery time and we're going to do some reading, would you like to choose a book from these two? Giving him choices, then he's more compliant. This was one, I'm going to talk about this client a couple of times throughout the talk, but my client, when he was 10 years old, was very upset that his parents were always deciding what they were going to do on holiday. And he said, it makes absolutely no sense to me that my parents get to decide where we go on vacation. So that's like the difficulty of not understanding the social hierarchy. Like, most people don't ask their 10-year-olds necessarily where do you want to go on vacation, and you're paying for the vacation. So usually you choose where they're going. And families like that, these things aren't always a democracy. You don't always take a vote and decide. So this client has always and has continued with some level of PDA this client is now an adult. And we'll talk a little bit about some job issues that he continues to have related to his PDA. When I feel like someone is expecting me to do what they want right away, I panic. Why do I need to do it? What if I can't? What if I mess up? What are they actually expecting? So again, you say to your kid, I need you to get your homework started. And it sets off all of this, where I know intellectually, you know that your child knows I know how to do my homework, but all of this anxiety is set off. What if I can't be perfect? What if I can't do it the way that they want to? When are they going to come back and check on me? What if I don't get it done? And all of that just causes either a meltdown or a shutdown, which I think you can understand when you view it this way, that this is what is happening to the person. We've learned to do things on her time. We talk each night about the things that we need to do the next day, and we let her plan the order. So we're going to see that this is a really important technique in working with people with PDA. Next slide, please. So my father says I have to go to college to be successful, so I drop out. He tells me I should be working full time or more, so I quit my job. He says that I'm irresponsible for door dashing and I need to stop, but I make that my main source of income. So I quite literally live in spite. And don't get me wrong, this is hard, but I can't help myself. So again, this is a person who's just like anything. These are not demands. These are just a father saying, you really need to go to college to be able to get a job. And then it's like, okay, then I'm going to drop out. And obviously, this person knows they're the ones that are kind of suffering the negative consequences, but they cannot help it. This is how they are wired and how they respond. And finally, people trying to control me, no matter how politely and regardless of their place in social hierarchies, feels like an attack on me. And this was said by a woman who goes by the name Sally Cat. She's an amazing PDA author. I put her contact information in the resources at the end of this talk. She's really amazing. She does amazing visuals of what it's like to be PDA. So I think that again, it's like, she understands, but it literally feels like an attack. Anything when she feels like somebody's trying to control me. And so think again, this is really hard to do. This is not manipulation. These are not kids just wanting their own way all the time. These are people who really need for their wants and needs to be listened to. Next slide, please. So some of you may have heard about the polyvagal theory, which is talked about a lot with PDA, talked about a little bit with autism and a couple of other diagnoses. And the thing is that there's not any real good research to support this idea. I mean, obviously, we do have different vagal systems that do react to different things. But the reason why I'm going to talk about it right now is just because I think that I want to be able to have people understand that what PDA people are seeking is a sense of safety. And when we say safety, we mean being able to be calm and regulated. So in school, knowing that I can go into school and I'm not going to be told that I have to do this and I have to do that, and people aren't going to be controlling me all day long for 7 hours a day, and I'm going to be able to have some autonomy there. Going into a job and knowing, hey, I've got some control over what's going to happen here today, and just in life, in a relationship, even knowing that. And so safety is kind of determined by what's going on internally inside of our bodies. Like, how is our autonomic nervous system responding to things? And so if you're feeling safe and you're able to be socially engaged, right, that's when your ventral vagal system is being activated. So that is, I'm calm and I'm able to learn, I'm able to do things. And this is the state that we all want to be in. But what happens with PDA when you give demands or somebody feels like they've lost control is that either they get activated in their sympathetic activation, which then kind of is an overactivation, and that makes people agitated and become frantic and really feel like it's that fight of the, fight, flight, freeze. And so that's when we get the meltdowns. But alternately, your dorsal vagal system could be activated, and that actually produces more numbness, and that produces the shutdowns, people feeling collapsed, and that's the freeze part. So these are like anxiety reactions. We're calm, and then something happens, and we either go up or we go down. And even when we are able to say to ourselves, oh, it's not a command, our bodies tend to override our brains. So that is how we're feeling internally, kind of really drive. We have to train our brain to control our bodies because our bodies are designed to control us. We feel something inside, and right away we're looking for, okay, what is it that I'm feeling? And a lot of times with people with PDA, they're not very good at really understanding why their body is reacting a particular way. So oftentimes they can't tell you why it is that they're getting so upset, because this is something that sometimes we do as parents, as teachers. We might say, I don't know, why are you getting so upset? And they cannot tell you. They literally cannot tell you because they don't have the words to describe it. It's part of the reason, too, why a lot of times PDA people can be set off, like the one quote, having to drink water. It's like, I don't know when I'm hungry. I don't know the cues for hunger. And so I'm constantly being told that I have to eat, but I don't know when. And I don't know what this feeling is. And so that's going to set off again, overactivation or underactivation. And it could set off both, not at the same time, but you could have PDA people who tend to both, get an overreaction or wind up going into the freeze or the flight type of reaction. Next slide, please. So, what are we going to do about this? And I'm going to go, I mean, this could be a talk in and of itself about the different strategies that you can use. But the strategies that are most used are called PANDA. So PANDA. I'm going to talk about them a little bit for each one. So the first, well, not the first, but P for PANDA, it stands for pick your battles. And this means that when you are dealing with somebody with PDA, you really need to think to yourself, because oftentimes we'll say things like, you need to do the dishes. And do they really need to do the dishes? Do you want them to do the dishes? Would it be helpful if they did the dishes? And so trying to minimize rules and getting a little bit more input and say and letting the PDA people feel like they have some control. So again, it might be something like, I would like if you could help me do at least one chore. Which chore would you like to do? Here's a chore list. Pick the one that you would like to do. And then they feel like, hey, I had control over this. I wasn't told what to do. And so they might be more likely to then follow that. Allowing choice and some control. So again, it's, if you know that you're going somewhere and just saying to your child, hey, you know what, we're going to be going to the bank and to Trader Joe's and Costco, which one would you like to go to first? And even though it might be inconvenient because the Costco is the furthest away and then they want to go to the Trader Joe's, if you can keep that child regulated, it doesn't mean that you need to do this forever, because what we're finding is that as we implement a lot of these strategies, a lot of the PDA also will sort of self-regulate away, if you will. But we all do have some autonomy in our lives. And if I'm doing errands, I get to choose what order I do them in. Right now, there's nobody who tells me what order I have to do them in. So, it's not really asking them to do something that's completely out of the ordinary, to be able to have some control. Providing rationales, I think that's very important. So that's always explaining, if the kid's like, why do I need to put on my shoes? I don't want to put my shoes. I eat shoes. I was like, well, you need to wear shoes because that's the only way that we can go into Costco. Or you need to wear shoes because that's going to keep your feet safe. The pavement is really hot. And so you don't, again, it's not that because I told you to, because you need to. Well, why do they need to? And sometimes this leads to discussions of, you know what, it's just this random rule, and I don't know who made up the rule. And what I like to do with a lot of my clients is say, you know what, maybe let's write a letter. Let's write a letter to Costco and say, why do I need to wear shoes? And let's tell them why shoes make you uncomfortable. And let's see maybe if that's something that could change. And just the act of writing that letter oftentimes helps people feel like, hey, I have some autonomy, I have some control. I tried to find out. Now they told me why I have to do it, and I get it. And sometimes you're going to have to accept that some things just can't be done. Like it just might not be capable, especially when your child is in that shutdown, meltdown mode. It might not be able to be done. And it might be something that you're just going to have to walk away from and come back to an hour later, come back to 5 hours later, come back to the next day, because you're not, again, going to be able to nag, coerce, or you're not going to be able to punish or reinforce PDA out of somebody. The A stands for anxiety, or the first A stands for anxiety management. You want to try and use a low arousal approach. You might be hearing things like about unschooling, unparenting, low demand parenting. So the low arousal approach is just really knowing where is my child regulated the most and trying to keep them in that zone as much as possible and preparing them for the times that they might need to move out of that. And really recognizing and validating the underlying anxiety that the person is experiencing, and also validating their sensory challenges, validating that, it might be socially difficult for them, that going to a party might be really overwhelming for them. And if you're a therapist, you can be working with your clients on, gosh, do you just want to show up to the party and say, hi, I can't stay, but I just wanted to stop by for a minute, grab a, glass of Coke or something like that, and then leave. And helping them see what level, where is your comfort level, what can you do, and if you can't do anything, that's okay if you can't go to the party. Always have coping strategies ready. And these can be things like deep breathing exercises. They can be mindfulness exercises. They can be anything like that. Though there are some PDA people who have said that they feel like mindfulness is also a demand kind of. So again, you need to work with your individual child, your client, your student to really find out what are those coping mechanisms that they can handle. And treat reactions like panic attacks because that really is what they are. And if your child was having a panic attack for something else that happened, you wouldn't be nagging and coercing them. You might be a little bit more like, okay, let's just step away from this for a while. And I would suggest that you do the same when a person is in that PDA meltdown. Next slide, please. The N is negotiating. As much as possible, you want to stay calm. I know it's very difficult, especially if your child is highly aroused and is yelling, kicking, throwing things, breaking things, and everything. But you can stay calm and just really try to negotiate. And it's okay to say, you know what, I can tell that you are not ready to do this right now. So let's just take a moment. I'm going to let you sit with it, and I'll come back and we'll figure out what we can do. Okay. And so we will figure out what we can do. We will do this together. We will figure it out. And you want to be as fair as possible, and you want to try and foster trust so that the person knows, hey, I hear you. You cannot do this right now. This is too overwhelming for you. Let's take a step back and let's figure out what can you do? What is going to keep you comfortable and regulated? If you can, you want to try and disguise and manage your demands. So try and phrasing things indirectly. So again, instead of I need you to feed the dog, you can say, hey, it looks like the dog's kind of hungry. And oftentimes then the person will be like, oh, I'll feed him. Or, okay. So you kind of gave the hint to feed the dog, but you didn't specifically tell them what to do. So that's how you give an indirect command. You want to be able to monitor their tolerance, and try and match the demands accordingly. So again, as a teacher, as a therapist, as a parent, we oftentimes do know kind of where that threshold is. And we want to keep them in the threshold. And we can systematically increase those thresholds. But we need to understand that the PowerPoint just went away. There we go. And as much as possible, do things together. So I like to, a lot of times with my clients and even here in our schools, when it's time for cleanup and everything, we don't do you have to clean up. So if I know that this is something, if we've got students with PDA, I might say, I'm going to start by cleaning up all the cars. What would you like to clean up? And sometimes the student's going to say nothing, and I'll say, okay, and I'll continue to clean up or whatever. And then I might say, I can't reach that car over there. And usually then the kid will be like, oh, okay, I'll help. And next thing you know, they are helping. But never once did I say you have to clean up. We're going to do it together. You know what? I'm going to clean up this. You can clean up that. Can you help me do this? Those kind of things, so that they don't come across as demands. Next slide, please. And then trying to be as adaptable as possible, trying humor, using distraction, novelty, role play. So again, sometimes kids do enjoy when you role play. It's like, okay, well, you be the mom and I'll be the child. And you can really see from how the child is giving commands, both either how they hear things or also what they feel would be regulating for them. You're going to be flexible. You're going to allow as much time as possible to get things done. Give advance notice when you can. Hey, this is what's going to happen. What order would you like to do it in? How would you like to do it? Would you like to do it? and really trying to balance the amounts of give and take. So you can always say, you know what, I'll pick one, you pick one, sister will pick one, so that it's not solely the PDA person who's in control, but letting them feel like they have some control, that they have some autonomy. Next slide, please. A couple of helpful sentence starters. I think that this is always really good. If you say, I wonder if we can, or how can we get your homework done? Okay, that's not a command. That's a question where you're really asking the person what can be done. Let's say we can beat the clock. We only have 10 minutes to get everything, ready for us to leave for school. You think we can beat the clock? So then it becomes a game. It's kind of, using a little bit of humor. Maybe we could investigate what books you want to read. And then that's, again, it's not a command, but you're still getting the child to read. Who do you want to help you today is always a really good one, especially this is a good tactic in school. So sometimes kids just are like, I don't want to listen to my aide. I don't want to. And I was like, okay, look, who would you like to help you today? It's a brand new day. Do you want the teacher? Do you want the aide? Something like that to help you. When would be a good time for you to get your homework started instead of coming in and saying, start your homework is always going to work. You seem to be stuck getting started. How can I help you? And this last one is something that Zach Morris, who does a lot of work on PDA and PDA students, I've put again his contact in the resources. He has just this great way sometimes when kids are coming down from a meltdown to kind of say to them, how do you imagine me supporting you? Which is a nicer way, because sometimes when we say, how can I help? The kid gets re upset, right? I don't know. How do you imagine me supporting you? How do you imagine me helping you? Is a really interesting way of kind of getting the kid to be able to tell you what they need without specifically asking, what do you need? So you're going to try to avoid saying things like, it's time for you, you've got to, you need to, you must. We should not say to kids, you are safe. Because in that moment, they are not feeling safe. And us just telling them that they're safe is actually invalidating their feelings. So instead, we really want to be able to say, wow, it looks like you're not feeling safe right now. So even though theoretically they are safe, we're going to validate, hey, we see that you are not feeling safe. Just calm down. If they could calm down, they would. We need to be reminding them of what some of their strategies are to try and calm down. So that, again, we're honoring the fact that we do understand what they are experiencing. And then saying, but you love. So again, if in that moment when somebody has come to you and said, you need to lecture on climate change, and you said, oh, no, I can't do public speaking. And the person says to you, but you love talking about climate change. That doesn't help you. If anything, it's kind of going to make you go, not in front of a lot of people. It doesn't, us saying to them, but you love, doesn't change the situation that they are feeling dysregulated at that moment. They are unable to follow the command at that moment, and it doesn't really help them when you make comments like, but you love doing that. You can always say, what do you need to want to do this again, or something like that. Next slide, please. So finally, this is our last slide, so that I do want to have time for some questions, but a couple of other helpful strategies. Again, this is all about feeling safe and feeling safe being regulated in terms of your autonomic nervous system, right? Feeling regulated, not having overactivation, underactivation. And so you want PDA people to feel like, I know I'm heard, I know I'm seen, I know I'm understood. And sometimes people can't always get what they want. And we do understand that. But just being able to say, you know what, I get it. This is really hard for you. This is not something that you enjoy. How can we get it done? Is letting them know things still need to get done, but I understand what you're going through. Please don't see PDA children, PDA adults as being bad, as being manipulative. We want to look at them from an affirming lens. They need a different approach. They need a different way of being helped through these difficult times, but they're not doing this to be manipulative. And it's not because they're lazy, and it's not because they're just, I don't feel like it. It's really an internal struggle for them. So we have to establish trust. They have to feel like, again, you are going to keep them safe. Opting out of tasks is sometimes okay. If a child really does not like PE, it really is incumbent upon the school to think, well, what are some other options for them to do? Because playing organized sports might not be something that they can really do. So, okay, what are some other options? You'll see if people come to visit our school here that we have plenty of students who just like walk the track because that's kind of what they're comfortable doing. Or we'll have them do just a couple of jumping jacks. And then it's like, okay, now you can go and do whatever you want to do. Being able to set your own schedule, allowing decompression space. So this is really important. Even when we're thinking of adults and like jobs and stuff like that, there really needs to be a space where somebody can go when they're feeling overwhelmed. And maybe that's going out to their car, maybe that's a staff lounge, maybe that's just going into the restroom or something like that. But knowing that there's a place that they can go when that anxiety kicks in. Using indirect communication, sometimes just use some post-it notes, right? It's just like, homework is due tomorrow, something like that. So you're not telling them when to do it, you're not telling them how to do it, you're just reminding them that the homework is due. Finding out what it looks like for the child to feel safe. Asking the child, asking your young adult child even, what do you need to feel safe? Supporting sensory needs as much as possible. That means that occupational therapy, sensory integration therapy might be something that you want to look into for children. You want to make sure that they've got sensory diet materials at school and even at work. So while I sometimes will have my little fidget toy in meetings at work. Sometimes I myself need to fidget or re-regulate myself. And finally, you want to try to match the demands to the tolerance level. So there might be a certain level of demand that a person can handle, and you're going to start there while you're building up and letting them have that sense of safety. So then when you're feeling safe, it's a little bit easier too to move forward and to try something new and to try something that used to be difficult. So that is the end of my talk, and I really appreciate everybody listening. And these are the resources that I mentioned. The slides will be available for you. But these are the resources if you want to take a screenshot or whatever that I think are the best for you. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens, for your very, very highly informative presentation. And I want to just take a minute. I know we have a couple minutes to ask a couple questions that were provided in the chat. And I'll start with the first question. The first question is, it's really when you assess someone for PDA, who do you get the information from? For most kids, you want to have parent, teacher, and a child informants. So is that true here? And basically the question is, how do you assess or how would you assess to know if this is PDA?
So that's a great question. One of the things that I really look for is how kind of vociferously are they reacting to demands? How consistent is it? So it's not just, oh, he didn't sleep well, so he's less tolerant. You can have, let's say a student would come into the class and be really happy, and all of a sudden you say, oh, that's great, take out your notebook, and that just sets them off. And when it's a consistent pattern, it has to be seen in almost every situation, in whether the child comes in regulated or not regulated. And that you see those tendencies to distract being really good, with pretend or role play, being socially motivated. All of those things should be present in order for you to really think that this is pathological demand avoidance.
Great, thank you, Laurie. Next question. I think we have time for a couple more. Just kind of building on that question. One of the one of the participants said, "How do you distinguish PDA from oppositional defiant disorder?"
So oppositional defiant disorder has a clear diagnostic pattern. And PDA is much more of kind of a response solely to a perceived demand. And again, oftentimes with oppositional defiant disorder, if you said to that kid, hey, let's go to Disneyland, they're going to be like, fantastic, let's go. So you don't always see the oppositionality to things that they really like and enjoy doing or something that is a routine. Whereas with pathological demand avoidance, it again can just be like, wow, I wasn't prepared for that demand. Going to Disneyland is a demand. And so you'll see this reaction even when things can be something that they truly enjoy doing. And so that's one of the primary distinctions that I would be looking for.
Okay, I think we have time for maybe one or two, possibly. We'll do one and then see how long this takes for Dr. Stevens to answer. This individual says, I have a 20-year-old with PDA. Do you recommend sharing this recording with her to better understand herself?
Oh, that's a great question. So I do bring up pathological demand avoidance with all of my clients that I think might be experiencing pathological demand avoidance because so many people nowadays are like, well, let me get on TikTok or let me get here and there and look at it. And I like to bring it up so that I can sort of say, you might want to look here to find out more about it. However, I tend to kind of, I don't know, gloss over the word pathological. So sometimes I'll say, it's called pathological demand avoidance, but it's really like persistent demand avoidance. And because I know just the word pathological can set a lot of people off, as it should, because it's not a word that nobody wants to be called pathological. So, but I think absolutely you can bring that up if your daughter, I think you said it was a daughter, has a therapist. You can also discuss it with the therapist and see if the therapist is seeing the same things and if she agrees. But I oftentimes will just say, hey, what do you think about this? Do you think that this defines you? And more often than not, my clients will say, wow, I didn't know about that. But yeah, that completely is how I feel. So I think it can maybe give some explanation and that feeling of safety that your daughter is like, wow, hey, you figured something out about me and you're trying to learn how to help me stay safe and regulated.
All right, I think that's going to be time to wrap up so we can finish up with our last few slides. So I want to just first of all, again, thank you, Dr. Stevens, for your presentation. I think it was very informative and just thanks for sharing your expertise again. As a reminder, this presentation has been recorded. So we will let you know when that is available to view. Some of you have asked about the help group, and I think it just slid out on a banner. So the helpgroup.org/webcast /. So if you go to that, take a picture, you can find all of our webcasts and you can access them through there. And now just a few more slides, just discussing some of the events coming up and resources from the help group that may be of interest to you. So first, as you can see on the slide there, Lumina Counseling. It's our 24/7 Lumina counseling provider. It's providing in-person and virtual counseling. So that's luminacounselingla.com. And please feel free to contact them at admissions at the help group. And also you can find that information on our website. We also have our spring break for young adults coming up. So Help Groups LA, our Advanced LA is offering young adult program for spring break. And that is next week, April 14th through the 18th. And please reach out to admissions at 877. Scan the QR code there for more information and to register. We do have some spots available. And next, another QR code for you to scan. Hopefully your phones are out and ready to go. Please scan that. We have our summer camps coming up, and those will be for 6 to 17-year-olds across the spectrum disorder, autism spectrum disorder. You can apply today. We still have availability. Those start on June 9th, and those will be held at the Sherman Oaks location. And again, that QR code will have more information, and you can find all of this at our website as well at thehelpgroup.org, and reach out to admissions if you have specific questions. Advance LA is also offering a young adult program in addition to the spring break that I mentioned earlier. This is just a unique social recreational summer program with mild to intensive support needs for young adults ages 18 to 22. And please reach out using that QR code as well that you can scan right now. And coming up just around the corner is our 12th annual Special Needs Resource Fair. And that will be actually Sunday, not this Sunday, but this month on Sunday, April 27th. It'll be held at our Sherman Oaks campus. This is attended by numerous individuals across the LA area and region. It's an opportunity for parents and professionals to discover the wonderful resources that Los Angeles has to offer its special needs community. So we encourage you to attend and join that. And there's a QR code for you to join as well. Again, I can't thank you, Dr. Stevens, enough for your presentation. We will be having this on the website. I do have a couple follow-ups as well that I'll give to you to reach out to people individually. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We just appreciate you choosing time to spend with your time to spend with us today. And we at the Help Group are here for you when you need us. So please don't hesitate to reach out. We have a lot of offerings coming up, and please join any of those or a resource fair. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you again soon at our upcoming webinar. Thank you so much.